Hello, and welcome to my channel. We're not gonna talk about the fact that I disappeared for 8 months. Uh, I'm back after so long with a mid-year book freakout tag, because I saw everybody doing it, so I was like, it would be so fun to get back into it, and just do it. I've been reading while I was gone. It's not like I stopped reading or stopped caring about books. I was just gone. So, without further ado, the first question in the book freakout tag is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And that has to be The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. This is actually a short story, it's not a full-length novel, but it's so good. Like, I gave it 5 stars, and because it was so good, I actually picked up 2 more of her books. One I'm currently reading, and one I have yet to read that is on my shelf, that I'm very excited to get to. So it had a big impact on me. And the second question is, what is your favorite sequel that you've read so far this year? And that would have to be Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. I picked up The Diviners because everybody said that it was very spooky, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's a little spooky, but I want more from that. And in this, you get introduced fully to the King of Crows. Well, not fully, but mostly to the King of Crows. And he scares the ever-living crap out of me. He's so horrifying. I was afraid to read this book at night. I was afraid to look out my windows because I was like, I will see the King of Crows, and I'm not prepared for that. But this was surpassed The Diviners for me, and is probably one of the main reasons I continue on with the series and am so invested in it currently. I just filmed a whole clip without actually filming it, so we're doing it again. So the third question is there any books that have already been released that you haven't read yet but you are super excited to read? And I have 2, and the first one would be The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, which is the last book in the Truly Devious series. And I, less than a month ago, reread Truly Devious and The Vanishing Stair. Loved them both, but still haven't gotten to this one. And I know it's because I'm afraid that this series is going to end on, like, a bad note, because Truly Devious was so good, and then The Vanishing Stair was just okay for me, and I'm so afraid that this is just going to be okay, or it's going to be worse than okay, and so I'm very afraid to pick it up, because I've seen a lot of mixed feelings about it, so we shall see eventually. The second book I am super excited to get to is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I'm currently in the process of rereading the Hunger Games trilogy so that I can read this. I don't think you need to reread them to read this because it is a prequel about President Snow, but for me, I need that memory to be jogged because I haven't read them in like 4 or 5 years. Nonetheless, I'm very excited about that, and I'm actually very happy to be rereading The Hunger Games because it's reminding me of how much I really loved that series, and that's one of the series that really got me into reading. So the fourth question is, what are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? And I only have 2. I don't really keep up with with people's highly anticipated releases or anything. I usually just see books and I'm like, ooh. So the 2 books I'm very excited for would be Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. I read Wilder Girls, which is right there, by Rory Power, and I've read it 3 times since it debuted last September or October, and it is a 5-star every time I read it. And then the second book I'm super excited for is actually Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. I am Twilight trash. I love Twilight, so I'm very excited for Midnight Sun, and it's coming out in August 4th, I believe. So the next question is, what is your biggest disappointment so far this year? And I have 2 very big disappointments. The first one, don't come at me, is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I wanted to love this because, 1, it's written in verse, and I've heard great things about it. However, I feel like it being written in verse took away from what the story could have been. I've read multiple stories in verse, specifically by Ellen Hopkins, who does an amazing job writing in verse. Not to say that Acevedo didn't, it's just I feel as though the story wasn't fully fleshed because it was written in verse, and that really bothered me. I listened to the audiobook for this in a day, and I was very underwhelmed. I actually don't own the book anymore because I didn't like it, so I got rid of it. Don't take that personally. I get rid of any book that I don't like or I don't plan on reading anytime soon. So the second disappointment I have is actually Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. I reread Carry On because I hadn't read it again for many years, and I remembered how much I loved Carry On, and it was so great. And then I picked up Wayward Son, and I was just severely underwhelmed by anything that happened. It just wasn't as good as Carry On, and honestly, my life would probably be fine if she had decided not to write this book. Hi, editing Nisha here. I just want to say that I didn't mean that in a mean way. I literally just mean that, like, if I hadn't read this, I feel like Carry On would have been a complete story for me. Not that, like, my life was detrimented because she wrote this. The next question is, what was your biggest surprise this year so far? The biggest surprise I had was Nixia by Scott Regent. Reingen? I can't say names. But one of the reasons this was such a big surprise for me is this was the first book I read this year, and I actually wasn't going to read it, but I let my sister-in-law pick my first read of the year, and she picked this one, and I was very hesitant because it is a sci-fi, and I'm not very into sci-fi, but I loved this. It was so good, and I plan to pick up the next 2 books in the series, but I just haven't gotten around to it because I haven't ordered them. They're not on my shelves. I don't think my library has them, so. The next question is, who is your favorite new author? This could be new to you or a debut author, and I actually picked a debut author this year, and that would be Ryan LaSala, the person who wrote, I don't know their pronouns, I believe they go by he pronouns, well, he goes by he pronouns. He does go by he pronouns, you fucking idiot. He wrote Reverie, and Reverie was so good. The writing style was just so beautiful, and I don't know if I would call it lyrical, because I feel like people use lyrical to describe Erin Morgenstern's writing, which I don't think that this is the same as Erin Morgenstern's writing. I believe that this is very beautiful and very fleshed out and just poetic in a way, specifically when they are in the reveries. It's just amazing. I really enjoyed it. I loved his writing. I'd also like to mention that there's a lot of queer rep in this. The main villain in this is a freaking drag queen, or like a non-binary drag queen, I'm not quite sure. And then Kane Montgomery, the main character, is gay, and it's just... The next question is, who is your fictional crush this year? This would have to be Shepard from Wayward Son. Though I did not like this book, I adored Shepard. I thought he was amazing. I thought that he was very funny, and I just thought he was perfect. So I really enjoyed him. He was one of the best parts of the book. Also, I am currently almost done with Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, and the character Lyle, love him. He's such a nerd. He's great. And yes, I've gotten to his little backstory thing, but that does not affect me at all. The next question is, who is your new favorite character? And that would have to be Mateo Torres from They Both Die at the End. I just found him very endearing and very relatable in some aspects, and I just adored him. And as the title says, they both die at the end, and his death hurt a lot. Also, Mateo Torres' perspective in this book is narrated by Michael Crouch, who is one of my favorite audiobook narrators. He narrates the boy from Dry. He narrates Kane Montgomery in Reverie, which was amazing. You can never go wrong with a Michael Crouch audiobook. So the next question is a book that made you cry, and that would have to be Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray. I'm not going to say who because that's major spoilers, but there is a character that dies, and I said the person's pronouns, so I had to cut it. But the person that dies, it really hurt me. Their death was awful, and I was just crying so hard that I had to stop reading for a little bit and just, like, calm myself down, which I know sounds dramatic, but, like, when you spend 3 books with these specific characters and one of them dies in a very awful way, it's very heartbreaking. And another book that made me cry, as I said earlier, was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. The title tells you that they're going to die, but it doesn't make it hurt any less. I always figured that if I knew it was coming, it wouldn't hurt, but Adam spends this book making you care so much about Mateo and Rufus that, like, when they do die, it really, really hurts. The next question is a book that made you happy. So that would be Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This was a reread for me, but it just reminded me how much I loved it, and I think I loved it even more the second time I read it versus the first time I read it. So this, I don't know, it just made me really giddy, and I was like waiting for them to get together, and I was just like really into it. So another book that made me really happy and always makes me really happy when I read it is The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. I haven't read the second one in the series, but the first one is very cute and I adore it, and whenever I'm in a bit of a reading slump or I want something very easy, I always turn to this, and it's always a 5-star for me. So the next is, what is the most beautiful book you've bought this year? And I've bought a lot of books this year, but I don't think any of them are particularly beautiful, but The Starless Sea is very pretty. It's not the Waterstones edition, which is even prettier, but I've tried to buy the Waterstones edition like 5 times, and every time they're like, we can't fulfill your order. Okay, and the final question is, what are some books that you need to read before the end of the year? And some books that I need to read or would particularly like to get to before the end of the year would first be Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, because I'm currently in the middle of Catching Fire, so this should happen within the next month, hopefully. If it does, I may do a reading blog for it. I don't know, though. Another book would be The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson, because, again, it is something that I do need to get to. It's just a fear of this series ending and it not ending on a good note. Next book is also the last in a series, and it is The Toll by Neil Shusterman. If you go back and watch my old videos, I am very much in love with Neil Shusterman and his writing and his other 3 books. Not Unwound or any of those, but like his newer books. And I just really need to get to this. I have the audiobook for it. I've had the audiobook for a while. Again, it's a fear that this book isn't going to live up to what I have in my head, and that it's going to ruin the whole series for me, which isn't reasonable. I've heard pretty good things. So the next book I want to get to is The King of Crows by Libba Bray. This is the last book in the Diviner series, and I actually haven't been putting this one off. I just prefer to have the audiobook for it, because that text is like 6-point font. So no thanks. And it's pretty thick. So I would prefer to have the audiobook to follow along, because I've experienced all Diviner's books by audio, so I would like to continue that. But I'm actually very excited to get to this one, and I'm not going to put it off. I'm actually thinking of using my Audible credit next month to buy this. And the last book I want to get to before the end of the year is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I run a dark academia blog, and I've never read The Secret History, so I'm obviously an imposter and I do not belong in that community. What am I doing there? I don't know, but it's beautiful. So I would like to get to this to understand what everyone is talking about, and everyone loves it. So I've only heard like one person who didn't like it, and they never really gave me a specific reason why they didn't like it. So I want to get to this next. Well, not next, but eventually. So that's it. Those are all the books that I have for you and all the questions I have to answer. So goodbye. It will not be another 8 months until I am back. I want to start making videos again and making weekly reading vlogs. It's just I've been in a bit of a reading slump, so I'm not sure how well reading vlogs would be. But the reading rush is coming up. I am planning to do a week-long vlog for that instead of vlogging every day, because my brain will explode if I do that. I have lots of ideas. I'm very excited.